My name is Charlie Terrell. I'm the operations manager for the National Labor Exchange with the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, or NASWA. I have up with me a very distinguished group made up of the National Labor Exchange Operations Committee. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christy, my colleague.
Hi, I'm Christy Merriman. I'm with Direct Employers. I'm also the operations manager for the National Labor Exchange on the DE side. And we have some employers here that are going to represent us. We do want this to be interactive on both sides, so we're going to open it up to questions. But first, I'm going to throw it over to Jolene so she can talk to us about what the National Labor Exchange and what is it and what's the purpose for employers.
The National Labor Exchange, or what we always refer to as the NLX for short, is a public-private partnership with Direct Employers Association and NASWA, the National Association of State Workforce Agencies. We partnered up in July of 2007 following the shutdown of AJB. The goal there was to help employers, states, and job seekers connect through an efficient online resource that has a national scope, where that drives that applicant or the job seeker traffic directly back to the original site where that job posting originated. And as a result, it's created a lot of efficiencies for employers in particular, as well as for states with many of the services that are offered to the state governments. And it's much more convenient for job seekers to use a search engine to look for a job rather than go into all kinds of separate different job boards. And the goal here is not so much to get them to the National Labor Exchange, the US.jobs platform, but to optimize those jobs on a variety of websites. And so we feed job content to several thousand websites. We feed that to all the state governments, which is the true essence of the National Labor Exchange. We also feed many government portals with your job content. So it really helps employers be efficient. You don't have to manually post your jobs. And it literally happens in your sleep overnight. Every 24 hours, we refresh that feed so that job content is always, vetted, it's verified, they're unduplicated. Job seekers who find job opportunities through the National Labor Exchange aren't going to click on a job and see an oops, sorry, this job no longer exists, because we refresh that feed every 24 hours.
Thanks, Jolene. So Pam, why don't you give them the state perspective on the reasons behind the creation of the National Labor Exchange?
My members, what we did when we joined the National Labor Exchange, the primary motivator was really we were looking for more jobs content, but an enhanced quality content. And what I mean by that is what Jolene was talking about, the unduplicated, currently available jobs from vetted employers. It is very discouraging as a job seeker to click on something and go to that, this job no longer available. And from the policy perspective, for us to be downloading jobs in the state job bank, we wanted to make sure that those jobs were from vetted employers and you wouldn't get the scams or some other very sad situations that happen when people try to apply and have their identity stolen and what have you. And also from the policy perspective, unduplicated jobs, because we would like to be able to study the births and deaths of jobs and get some quality labor market information. So for us, it was always about adding content. It's a systemic tool that is there to enhance the work of the state job banks so we could have a better employment outcome. When the .job site came along, that helped us with the quicker connection between the job seeker and the employers, and we're encouraging states to implement their own .job microsites to put their employers, and a lot of them are small and medium-sized employers, but also some large employers too, to provide them with that same kind of service and put them in this new era of online recruiting.
Okay, so like Christy mentioned when we kick things off, we want this to be an open panel. We want you guys to ask questions to the states, to the employers. We want your feedback. How can you get involved with the National Labor Exchange? What can the National Labor Exchange do for you? So please keep that in mind. And with that, I'll give you guys some time to think of some questions. And so I'm going to kick it off with one to Scott. Scott, how has serving on the National Labor Exchange Committee broadened your approach when dealing with employers?
A couple ways. One of the one of the things that it's done, it's allowed us to engage with employers, which we like to say we do, and in some levels we do. We don't necessarily, as a state, we don't necessarily do the best job we've done. And so one of the things that this relationship has allowed us to do is actually sit down with employers and find out what they need and what they want, to get them and see things from their perspective, which we historically like to tend to show up and tell people what we can do for them and see what they want. We don't go in and ask what they need. And so it's a bit of a different perspective. The other thing I think that I would offer that, particular to Texas and maybe other states too, that's been very liberating is that we've, for years, we tried to be all things to all people, and in particular employers, we wanted to do everything we felt like we had to. And this has kind of shown us that that you guys as employers don't expect us to come and solve all your problems, that there's certain things that we think we can help with, certain things that you might be able to need that we can provide, and that's when we want to be the connection. We don't want to be the solution. We don't want to try and be the solution. We want to be a solution. And from an operational standpoint of our own, like I said, that's been very liberating that we can recognize, we don't have to do everything under the sun for everybody, that we need to figure out what we can do well and go find out what they need and see how those things marry up.
Great. Thank you. Julie, what are the most valuable services that state workforce agencies can offer to local or national employers?
Well, one of the most valuable services we offer that's with US.jobs is their free indexing service to employers. And we have a team of 35 business services specialists who work out of the one-stop centers throughout our state. And they're highly involved in outreach activities to employers. They meet with employers one-on-one, right in the employer's work locations. And the major tool they have to sell is the job bank system, both the state job bank and of course US.jobs. Now for major employers and large employers, it's extremely efficient to sign up for the free indexing that's available through US.jobs, because US.jobs, I think as you explained here already, will go in daily to the career website, index the employer's career website, and they aggregate all of the data and send it to Minnesota Works. So we upload that every day with timely, current, real jobs and unduplicated jobs, because US.jobs vets the employers ahead of time, and we know that they're unique job offerings, just like Minnesota Works. So it helps to preserve the integrity of Minnesota Works because we follow those same standards. Yet it's an efficiency for the employers, and employers love the option. I just received a listing from US.jobs of all of our employers that are indexed, and we have 873 employers being indexed by US.jobs. One of them is IBM. Ray is representing them here. They have 350 jobs scraped and on our site today. Another that you're familiar with is Wells Fargo. They have 540 jobs indexed from their career website and sent to minnesotaworks.net this morning. So you can imagine how time-consuming it would be for an employer to data enter by hand each one of those 540 or 350 jobs. So US.jobs is providing a unique and wonderful service for these employers at no cost.
Thank you, Julie. I'm going to address this one to the employers, and then we're going to take questions from you. So of our employers up here on the Operations Committee, how has serving on the Operations Committee changed your perception of the workforce system? You want to start?
Sure.
Go ahead, Annette.
I've never really interacted with the state workforce folks before joining this committee, but the passion that they have displayed to help close the gap for our job seekers to find jobs is it's really unbelievable to me, and I feel better as an employer and even just as an American citizen, knowing that these folks are out here trying to close that gap and make it easier for the job seekers to find the jobs, the real jobs. And then I think that gives us credibility that we have this partnership to have our jobs with the NLX.
Anyone else?
I just think the partnership is great. I think we learn so much from each other, how we operate. We've been in our own little worlds, employers and government, and it's coming together to find solutions. We all care about getting folks employed, and we've got a partner moving forward. This is ridiculous that we work in our silos. We have to stop duplicating things and come together to find the right solutions that work for both of us. And this has been great to learn from each other.
I know for me, it's been great to marry the supply and the demand side of what we do. And that's been one of the most valuable benefits is we know what our needs are, but knowing what's available and being able to access that because of the partnership has been invaluable for us.
If I can
Thanks, you
just add
guys.
one thing.
Go ahead, Julie.
I was one of the charter members of the committee when I was a member prior to becoming an employee. And I was amazed, as Annette pointed out, about the passion that states have. But what was really cool, I thought, was how we challenged each other with our certain policies and practices. And there were myths and perceptions that states had about how employers do things. And likewise, we had similar myths and perceptions about states and why do the states do that crazy, why do they have that crazy policy in place? And I remember one of the very first things we talked about was how they didn't want to accept they would not accept postings into their state job banks unless it had an HR manager's name and contact information. Remember that? And we talked that through, and they're like, "Oh, well, that makes sense. You don't want, 500,000 phone calls because of the volume of the hiring that the larger companies do." And even small things like that can create big issues, really helped us, as Ray pointed out, just kind of come together and start working together to kind of not only eliminate the myths and perceptions, but to work on solutions.
And that first meeting was back in February of 2008, so we've come a long way.
What I really appreciate being on the operations committee is being able to work with the experts, not only the other states, because they're facing some of the same challenges that we face in Minnesota, but also the employers, of course, and the US.jobs and NASWA staff persons, because they are experts in their own rights on all of the issues about labor exchange systems, and they all deeply care. I've never met such a passionate group of people that have the expertise, the knowledge, and the concern. And it begins at the top with their leadership, and it's all the way through every person I've met within the committee and with these organizations. So I think we all have our own perspectives. We all have a strong concern for job seekers and employers and making the best match possible. And when you put all of these ideas from these different perspectives together, you're bound to come up with a far better solution than any one state or any one employer can manage to find on their own.